I was just laughing listening to all that, Piers. Donald Trump's never called anybody garbage. Donald Trump called Kamala Harris's advisors garbage just like the other week. Donald Trump said America is a trash can and the world is sending their garbage, which is migrants here. Donald Trump's called me and other people that oppose him in the media the enemy of the people. He's called people human scum. He said Haitian migrants were eating cats and dogs. Do we need to keep doing this? Like this, we're going to pretend to be offended on behalf of Donald Trump. And Steven Crowder, by the way, his whole career, this is why he's on Rumble, not on YouTube, because he got kicked off YouTube because all he does is insult gay people, insult trans people. The only garbage I know is Steven Crowder and Donald Trump. They're garbage. I don't think all of Donald Trump's supporters are garbage. Many of them are good people misinformed by Donald Trump and Steven Crowder's lies.
Stephen, your response?
Yeah, look, one thing, I don't like the way that these panels sometimes some people descend into nothing but ad hominem and interrupt each other. I promise to respect your time, and you will not hear me speak a single time today, not one interruption, until you hear this bell. I just ask that you give me the floor. I've never been banned from YouTube. As a matter of fact, this will be up on YouTube. The election live stream of the century will be on YouTube as well. Every single example that was just given was not addressed to the American people at large, and not even the Democrat voting base at large. America is for Americans. Are black people not Americans? Are Hispanic Americans not Americans? The qualifier that I have always made, and Donald Trump has always made, and the reason so many Americans support him is because there aren't those qualifiers of race in identity politics. Every single example, people around Kamala Harris, the people surrounding her, are scum and garbage.
Steven Crowder went on Piers Morgan Uncensored and debated Tim Miller. Crowder didn't even need to get personal because, honestly, Tim Miller does all the damage himself by just opening his mouth. Crowder brought his A game, calmly taking down Miller's arguments without breaking a sweat. This woke expert Tim Miller is out here acting shocked about Donald Trump's comments, as if he's suddenly got standards. Steven Crowder's response was dead on. Tim Miller and his pals love the outrage card whenever it's convenient. But Crowder isn't buying it, and neither are the millions watching Piers Morgan Uncensored. Steven Crowder just exposed how hollow these talking points are. And here's the best part. Crowder didn't even bother with the ad hominem attacks that Miller loves to throw around. Crowder kept it factual, zeroing in on Miller's weak attempts to frame Trump supporters as trash. Steven Crowder pointed out the real issue here, that Miller and his crowd just can't stand when people push back against their woke narrative. Piers Morgan, Uncensored with Steven Crowder, absolutely leveled up in this segment, showing just how ridiculous the woke left's talking points have become. Steven Crowder and Donald Trump, they're just not playing by the same rules, and Tim Miller couldn't keep up.
Garbage. The key difference here that we see, and I've gone through this quite a bit because the New York Times has a whole running article, at least between 2015 and 2021, as to all of Donald Trump's insults on Twitter before he was banned. You won't find Trump insulting the American voter like you do with the left. They did refer, we can argue the phantom apostrophe, like you said. I appreciate you recognizing its absurdity. Donald Trump goes after those in power, the elites, the DNC, the establishment. You may not like him referring to the swamp. You may not like him referring to people inside the Beltway, but he's never gone after the American voters. He actually does respect them, and he's trying to win them over. That's what we're actually talking about. It's the Achilles heel of the Democrat Party today. They're elitists. That's the problem with garbage.
Was it damaging for Donald Trump to have Tony Hinchcliffe at Madison Square Garden? I was there. The joke fell flat in the room, so it didn't work even on a comedic value with him. Although I thought Jon Stewart made a good point that this guy's a roaster. It's what he does. He roasts everybody and everything. But putting that aside, I saw Megyn Kelly and Bill O'Reilly both saying, look, if you're going to get to the last week of a race, you don't want people at rallies insulting Puerto Rico, given how many Puerto Ricans are in Pennsylvania, a crucial state. Do you agree?
If you're enjoying this breakdown, be sure to like and subscribe. Now let's dive back in. Let's talk about that Tony Hinchcliffe bit at Madison Square Garden. Personally, I thought the joke hit as it should. It's classic Tony, raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically funny. Megyn Kelly and Bill O'Reilly might think it's off base for the campaigns last week, but they're missing the point. This is what Tony Hinchcliffe does best. And for a lot of people, that's exactly the kind of energy they came for. Sure, it's a risk, but that's what keeps things real and memorable. Sometimes you've got to give the crowd what they didn't expect. That's what stands out and resonates with people. So no, Megyn Kelly and Bill O'Reilly can say what they want, but they're overlooking why this approach works for Donald Trump's base.
I don't care. I think there's a huge difference between a roast comedian making a joke and the sitting president referring to voters as garbage. You may not like one, but I don't think that we should be applying the same standard. Donald Trump has never called anyone garbage. Barack Obama referred to half of America as bitter clingers. Hillary Clinton, at least half of Trump voters as deplorables. And you know what? I've heard people refer to that joke as horrifying. I hate it when people feign offense when they're not really offended. Maybe some people are offended. I think a lot of people aren't that offended by the joke, at least not as much as they let on to be. But I've heard a lot of people refer to it as horrifying. I don't think a joke from an insult comic is horrifying. You know what is horrifying? Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, killed 6 million Jews. That's horrifying. To belittle the acts of the Nazi Party, the National Socialist Workers' Party, by referring to Donald Trump as a Nazi, which is largely the reason he was the subject of an assassination plot, I think that's horrifying. But that's just my opinion.
I agree, but someone who doesn't is the host of The Bulwark, Tim Miller. Tim, welcome to Uncensored.
I was just laughing listening to all that, Piers. Donald Trump's never called anybody garbage. Donald Trump called Kamala Harris's advisors garbage just like the other week. Donald Trump said America is a trash can and the world is sending their garbage, which is migrants here. Donald Trump's called me and other people that oppose him in the media the enemy of the people. He's called people human scum. He said Haitian migrants were eating cats and dogs. Do we need to keep doing this? We're going to pretend to be offended on behalf of Donald Trump. Steven Crowder, by the way, his whole career, this is why he's on Rumble, not on YouTube, because he got kicked off YouTube because all he does is insult gay people, insult trans people.
Based.
The only garbage I know is Steven Crowder and Donald Trump. They're garbage. I don't think all of Donald Trump's supporters are garbage. Many of them are good people misinformed by Donald Trump and Steven Crowder's lies.
Stephen, your response?
Yeah, look, one thing, I don't like the way that these panels sometimes some people descend into nothing but ad hominem and interrupt each other. I promise you, I'm going to respect your time, and you will not hear me speak a single time today, not one interruption, until you hear this bell. Give me the floor. I was never banned from YouTube. This will be up on YouTube. The election live stream will be on YouTube. Every example given was not addressed to the American people at large, not even the Democrat voting base. America is for Americans. Are black people not Americans? Are Hispanic Americans not Americans? The qualifier I have always made, and Donald Trump has always made, and the reason so many Americans support him is because there aren't those qualifiers of race we see in identity politics. Every single example, the people around Kamala Harris, the people surrounding her are scum and garbage. That's not going to be misinterpreted as Kamala's supporters are garbage. The voters of Donald Trump are deplorable. These people are scum. Kamala Harris is dumb, whatever he said. That's very different from the hatred of the American voter. Your floor.
Look, we've got Joe Biden pushing policies that don't line up with what the average American wants. Every single time someone like Donald Trump or any other conservative voice speaks out, there's immediate backlash. This is the media bias we keep seeing. You've got platforms out there censoring anything that doesn't fit this progressive narrative, especially when it's conservative voices trying to have a say. Just look at the censorship on social media. Conservative accounts getting flagged, posts removed, or worse, completely deplatformed. The whole point of American values is supposed to be free speech and open debate. But if you say anything that doesn't match their agenda, you're out. How is that freedom of speech? Expressing traditional American values gets you labeled or banned just because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Be bad timing to the point where you think, was that deliberate? Trying to sabotage it.
Thank you. I'm going to avoid ad hominem, which is tough because it seems to be coming from the other side.
I will note for the record that you have not gone ad hominem. And Tim, to be fair, all you've done is abuse Steve. All you've done is abuse Steve on a personal level.
His whole career, all he's done is attack gay and trans people. Now he's like, he's getting offended, being called out for it. Just Google his history of comments about gays, trans people, women. He is Mr. Ad hominem. So don't try to be like, oh, I'm Mr. Nice Guy now. Give me a break. Let's be honest.
Stephen?
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. As far as it being ill-advised, I would say so with Joe Biden. The problem is that Kamala Harris was given opportunities to distance herself from Joe Biden. She chose not to. She said there's not a thing she would do differently. She was one of his most important advisors in decisions that had an impact. Vice presidents aren't always given such an identifiable. She was. The talking point is she wasn't the border czar, even though Biden said she was tasked with discovering the root cause of the immigration issue. We had 3 million under Donald Trump's tenure, and now we have at least 15 to 20 million on the low end. That is a huge impact that affects Americans. If we want to talk about Donald Trump's actions hurting Americans, look, I guess we're back to 2016. The issue is no Americans have lived actions that have harmed them more than the latest administration. They've lived it. They lived Donald Trump for 4 years. They've lived Harris for 4 years. It doesn't work. It falls on deaf ears. It's like Paul Revere always saying, the exact same economy is coming. Same economy is coming. You want to talk about actions that have hurt? I would argue that the actions on the border, the actions on American energy, the policies have hurt Americans. It's why they're rejecting Kamala Harris. It's why they trust Donald Trump more on issues like the economy and immigration. Not one example has been presented. I'm not offended by any of this. Americans don't like it. Not one example of Donald Trump referring to the American people at large as garbage or insulting them as the Democrat Party does every single election cycle. Your floor.
Look, Steven Crowder came out swinging here. He's calling out the Biden-Harris administration for what it is, total chaos. The American people have been through 4 years of Donald Trump and now 4 years of Joe Biden and Harris. It's clear who's done what. Kamala Harris had all these chances to break away, to actually lead, and she chose to stick right there with Biden's failed policies. What do we get? Record numbers at the border, insane energy costs, and yet somehow it's Donald Trump they're blaming every time. And here's the real kicker. These folks keep throwing out that Donald Trump is against marginalized groups. It's the same old script. Trump hates trans people, black people, women, right? Has anyone shown a clip where Trump calls Americans garbage the way Democrats do every election cycle? No. They want us to buy this idea without a single example to back it up. Honestly, it's just how they see us. They don't even hide it. And let's be real, I think of them in the same way. They don't respect us. We don't respect them. At least Crowder's up front about where he stands, and that's what people respect about him. He's not afraid to take on Tim Miller on Piers Morgan Uncensored and lay out why Americans are fed up. Did you see him dismantled Miller's talking points, cooked him? This is Crowder at his best. I'd love to hear what you think about Crowder's debate with Tim Miller on Piers Morgan Uncensored. How do you feel about the way he takes on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, especially on the border and how they've handled Americans? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Personally, I think Crowder nailed it